Good evening, Des Moines. Welcome to the Doc and Lefty program here in the beautiful webcast1live.com studios in downtown Des Moines. If it's 6:30 on a Tuesday, you're listening to the host with the most. I am Lefty here with my partner in crime, the always invaluable but sometimes irascible Dr. Patrick Bertroche. Doc, how's it going?
You know, I am doing well.
You know, that was a pretty tame bump for you.
It was. Usually you really pound me.
I know. I wasn't taking I was thinking about something else. I was driving here, and I was really kind of preparing for our guest, who I'm going to have you introduce here in a minute. But and you hear him laughing in the background there. It basically not preparing to really. Let's just set the record straight. You and I don't like to really stick our guests too difficult.
No, we
right?
we don't do,
because we like having people on the show.
Yes,
because generally it's, you'd hear about the conservative echo chamber, the liberal echo chamber. The Doc and Lefty echo chamber is basically us playing a really perverted game of racquetball.
Yes, absolutely.
Not perverted in a bad way, but just it's not racquetball. It's just us arguing back and forth.
Well, the other thing is today we have a balanced studio. We have two conservatives on this side and two liberals on that side. Because remember, DJ Maggie G,
she could cut your mic.
Yeah. She could cut my mic.
She's probably needed to do it.
She's wanting the button. She's in there nodding.
Yeah. She could
pushing me right there.
That's true. I'm going to have a brief talk with her at one of the breaks as to why that hasn't happened yet.
That's true. That's true. But the thing is we pay her equally.
That's a good point.
Which is poorly at best.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize that we were. So maybe I need to have my mic cut.
You get paid, right? Yes. She's kind of grinning, turning red, going, "Not enough, Doc."
Yeah.
All right.
Well, really, is it with us? Would it ever be enough?
Yeah, absolutely. We're both charming people.
Well, I'm glad.
I'm much more intelligent, but
I would agree with half of that. You can pick whichever half that you want.
All I know is I rocked the beard better. When it was long and I had it beaded, man, I was styling.
Yeah.
And then I bought a new razor and did that. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about David Young shooting himself not in the foot but in the head in the last day or so.
Okay.
All right. And we have special guest Sam Clovis with us today. But, as everybody knows, we like to take the first segment, settle into the show. Anyway, David Young has come out and said, well, Obamacare is here to stay and we should not try to repeal it, but, fix the flaws that are within the thing. And there are several different blogs out there, and Steve Deace picks this up. Next thing you know, the Washington Examiner has it. So I'm like, in a period, and this news hit at 2:00 this afternoon. The reason I know is because I had a patient not show up, so I was out there surfing the web. And essentially, what it's saying in the blogosphere, and now picked up by the Washington Examiner, is David Young endorses Stacey Apple for Congress. And that's exact. I mean, they said, well, he has endorsed every position that Stacey Apple has. He's pro-choice, pro-gay marriage. He's pro-Obamacare, wants to raise the minimum wage. There's a couple of other things where they agree. And I'm like, honest to goodness. I mean, and we're talking about Dallas County. The people that elected Steve King, this is part of his district.
Right.
And kept Steve King in power forever. And they're all like, oh my goodness. They show Stacey Apple, some of the polls that they have, starting to surge. I mean, it's been a neck and neck race, and now she's pulling ahead. And the Washington Examiner says, if what David Young has said is not an endorsement of Stacey Apple, we're not quite sure what is.
Well, and what's interesting about that, and you've got we can talk a little bit about Steve King's old district because he got two Northwest Iowa boys in the studio. I'm a graduate from Lawrence Community High School in 2000 there,
really?
Sam. Yeah. Got a really good friend of mine went to Morningside, which I believe is your
that's where
current and or former employer.
It's current employer.
Current employer. Yeah. I didn't know if you were a professor emeritus yet, but you're
I'm
still working. Hey, I'm just making
and that's
sure.
Part of the problem with the educational system is you can't fire the teachers.
But it's what's interesting about that to me, and Sam, if you want to chime in on this,
sure.
It has been a long. Political parties tend to eat their own especially back in the old machine days. We don't have as much machine politics as we used to in this country. I think it would probably be impossible to achieve that with today's social media and 24-hour news the way that we have it. But maybe you'll disagree with me, but it feels like, especially in the last 10 years or so, dating back before the 2006 election, going back all the way to 2004, that even though you didn't have a whole lot of ideological diversity in the Democratic Party, other than the big things, you have your labor and your environmentalists maybe not getting along all the time, but typically you didn't see Democrats coming out on key positions saying, you know what, the minimum wage is a crock. Didn't really hear a whole lot of that from Democrats. Right. But still, I feel like Republicans today are much more willing to eat their own, like to David Young coming out and maybe making, and I don't know the context here, but maybe making a compromising statement, compromising in a good way, like I would be willing to do this or think about this. Right. And then the conservatives kind of just chow down on what he said, and well, now we can't endorse him. Right. So I don't know if that's something that you've come across, or
we're going to take a quick break right now. We're with Sam Clovis. He's a Republican extraordinaire running for Iowa State Treasurer.
Yes,
and apparently part of the board collective, according to some. So I think we'll term him 7 of 9 for the rest of the show. And we'll be back right after this break. Want to thank all of our sponsors, and we'll give Sam a chance to answer your question right
Absolutely.
there. Right after the break. Dr. Lee Heeb for governor, Heeb2014.org, BertrosAndAssociates.com, Labinas Law Firm, Halo Capital, Des Moines Anesthesia. There they are at 515-574-6442. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and all kinds of other stuff that Jenny G has going for us. And hit our website, docandlefty.com. I have a new blog up there called Obola. You guys should check it out. We'll be back right after the break.
Bertrosh and Associates, how can I help you?
Bertrosh and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. We have our special guest, Professor Sam Clovis, with us today, running for state treasurer. He was at one point running in the Republican primary for Senate. I think had a fairly decent showing statewide, which was coming from a Democratic side, surprising for an individual from Northwest Iowa to gain traction statewide. Generally, especially in the Des Moines area, and having been from and having come from Northwest Iowa myself, that side of the state not given a whole lot of attention in the media, not a lot of thought out east of in the eastern Iowa. So it was that was pretty cool to see one of my own at least make a little bit of a splash. But so the question that I asked you has been your experience, or would you disagree that today's Republican Party seems much more willing to eat its own rather than allow something approaching ideological diversity to kind of percolate in the ether?
I think the one thing is we have and I'll give you a longer answer than perhaps you need, but
well, you can talk as long as you want.
This is really goes back to there's a watershed event that took place in the 1960 election where we really started to see our first flock of single issue Democrats get elected to federal office in the House and the Senate. And the subsequent elections, we started to see more and more of and if you remember 72, and 72 was a watershed election for the Democrats, because this is where they really decided to take control of the party, and they didn't want to have any outliers, and because of the McGovern issue and McCarthy and all that. So what they brought together was that this became much more, the Democrat Party started dating all the way back to 72, really became more and more monolithic as time went on. The Republicans have always been feuding. I mean, it goes all the way back to the founding of the party. If you remember, in history, the founding of the party took place because of abolition, and we went through that. We have never, as a Republican Party, ever been able to resolve a lot of those issues. During the 1930s, we started to see the evolution of the Democrat Party in the South, and where the Southern Dixiecrats and the Midwestern Republicans started to gain common cause, and this eventually led to the reddening of the southern states, and this is why we have this big block of states down there now. But infighting in the Republican Party has always been there. Goldwater, Reagan, Ford, all of the Nixon, all of the luminaries that have come through. And then think about H.W. Bush and then George Bush, and think about some of the diversity that we've had along those lines. And now, even today, one of the things I think a lot of Republicans are reticent, or at least the national leadership of the Republican Party, they're reticent because of the political correctness in the media, rather than we keep a lot of our fights inside and we do eat our own. I think your point's absolutely there, but historically we've always done that.
Well, but I'm going to push back on that a little bit because
that's fine. I mean,
while I agree generally that especially starting in 72, I think that they expected to do better in 72 than they did. The Democrats did.
Right.
And obviously 76, that was a no-win for the Republican Party. There's not possible. Not possible.
No.
But I think that those 1970s Democrats paid for some of that ideological, and you're right. You're absolutely right that there was a time in the wilderness, especially in the 80s, for the Democratic Party, and they paid for that ideological purity with the election of Ronald Reagan.
Right.
But I really feel like the Republicans themselves have been a sort of lockstep party at least since 1980, because Ronald Reagan is in rarefied air, even though a lot of folks disagreed with him. Right. A lot of Republicans didn't like him back in the old days, especially when he was governor of California, for some of the policies out there. But the conventional wisdom that has evolved around the Republicans has been moral majority, Christian conservatives are the lifeblood, the beating heart of the Republican Party, and that seems monolithic to me. And so is that, and we're seeing the libertarians push back on that a little bit, but to me that seems a little bit more unified than what you described. Am I way off base there?
I don't think you're way off base. I would disagree. I mean, I just don't. And it's not a disagreement. I think it's a matter of degree.
Sure.
And I think maybe it's because I'm in the party, and and maybe sometimes I might get a little bit too close to the glass and may not see it as clearly as I should. But my experience has been that the whole moral majority bubble and all of that, the Ronald Reagan thing. What happened with the Ronald Reagan era is a lot of people became Ronald Reagan on the bandwagon and became Ronald Reagan conservatives.
Right.
And I use the air quotes there, but over
your
time,
Pennsylvania manufacturers, for example, that were always good Union Democrats.
Yes, and so we see that, and so what we've seen though is now we start to see more and more people fall off of that over the last 20 or 30 years. And what we end up seeing here is a much different party. And I think the strength or the social conservative base or the Tea Party element of the party is not as powerful today as it might have been in the 80s, because we have seen the party and the population grow. That has a lot to do with it. And we've seen the culture of the country change. And social media has been really driving a lot of this. Your generation has quite different perspective than my generation. I see it in my classroom. I mean, I go in there, and I'm old enough to be the grandfather of the kids I'm teaching, so I see two generations there, and I see this separation, and I see the differences in our views. But so I think that what has happened, though, is this strong element, this cultural conservative, the social conservative, the Tea Party conservative, is not as strong an element in the party, because if it were stronger, we would have more conservatives running. I mean, people like me would be more people like me would be successful.
Well, and that's an interesting take on it, because while I feel like that's right from a numbers standpoint,
Empirically,
right. It's so tough now because you're seeing this a little bit on the Democratic side too, only in the sense that, I mean, the Democrats haven't had to worry about as much because they've had 8 years of success in national elections. We can put it that way. But for 2010 and 2012, to a lesser degree than 2010, the Democrats have been able to maintain some semblance of power in the country. But you're seeing now in this midterm 2014, the woman running for Senate in Kentucky, who was doing well against Mitch McConnell, but is now backtracking, backing away from Obama a little bit. So there's some of those difficulties on the Democratic side too. But I wonder if what's going on with the middle. Why are the independents shying away from some of these candidates?
All right. I think that is an excellent question to bring up in the next segment. We have Sam Clovis with us today. We feel honored and lucky to have him. Hopefully he'll become a friend of the show. He used to be a senatorial candidate. And speaking of the Senate race, the Libertarian Party person, Dave Buttsier, or Dr. Buttsier from, I believe it's Dubuque, died in a plane crash today.
Yeah, that's
terrible.
Terrible
that's
news.
awful.
Yeah.
And so our prayers go out to his family and the other people that loved him. We're going to be back right after the break. We're going to talk with Sam about why he thinks that the middle is not really glomming on, or not really hearing the message of the Republican Party. And we'll be back right after this break. Don't forget to tune in for our sponsors, Heb2014.org, BetrosianAssociates.com, LabinosLawFirm.com, Halo Capital, Des Moines Anesthesia. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And don't forget to hit our website, DocandLefty.com, with new blogs. New this week, just for the lefty. We'll be back right after the break.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
See them here, see them there. You got bad credit? We don't care.
Visit emetroford.com for your guaranteed credit approval. Good credit, bad credit, no credit. Everybody drives with guaranteed credit approval at emetroford.com. Visit emetroford.com today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. We buzzed.
And that interrupted an almost compliment from Lefty to Sam.
I'll say it on air.
Oh, my goodness. See, and that's what he does. He waits till the last second, and then he goes, now I don't have to say anything. Now I'm clowning.
No, I have no problem. See, we're gonna bring in. We're gonna follow the advice of our mentor and show Yoda, Mr. McCoy, and bring you guys into what we were talking about off air, and that was that I was pointing out to Sam that even though he and I are pretty far apart politically speaking, that I thought that during the primary campaign, during the debates, that you were the most well-spoken, had the most interesting thing to say, and so I was really interested to get to talk to you personally on a show like this. And I want to get to your campaign, but I think that I've been having such a great time talking to you about politics in general that if you don't mind, we'll just keep talking about that. But Pat put the question at the top of the show. or at the top of the segment about why the middle seems to be shying away from the Republican Party's message, and to a lesser degree, I think you see some of it on the left. Although it feels to me that in national elections, the independents are much more comfortable voting for Democrats than they are for Republicans. I was wondering what you thought about that.
And again, I don't. I'm not sure what the empirical evidence indicates. The last two elections, I think, would certainly support your position.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there would be no question about that. But I also think if you take a look at let's go back to that whole issue we just talked about in the previous segment about take a look at the number of evangelicals that stayed at home, and take a look at the number of Tea Party people who stayed at home. I mean, we had 13 million fewer people vote in 2012 than in 2008. 13 million.
Yep.
And Barack Obama received 10 million fewer votes in 12 than he did in 8. And so what does that tell you? I mean, in the state of Iowa, the Republicans actually had 50,000 more votes than they did in the previous election and still lost the state by 88,000 votes.
Right.
And a lot of that is because people simply cannot tell a dime's bit of difference between the two parties. And this is what we heard all over the campaign trail out there. One of the big issues right now is take a look at the apathy. There's a lot of people that the primary results across the entire country were incredibly, like a third down, 33% fewer voters in primaries across the country.
Oh, we talked about that back in when the primaries happened back last summer.
Right.
I came in on election day on that, or the next week after, because we did the show and then I went and voted.
Right.
And what did I tell you?
Again.
Right. Yeah. Right. I have 6 names. I have 6 voter ID cards from all over the country.
There's
nobody at the polls.
Nobody there.
No,
I think, what did I say? I was like the 19th person who voted all day in my precinct. It was ridiculous.
Right.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, we turned out 163,000 votes in the Republican Party, and the Democrats only turned out 65,000.
Can you believe that?
Well, I can. I
mean,
in
a primary the raw numbers, that's terrible.
Well, but still, percentage-wise, I mean, percentage of registered voters. I mean, typically we can generate 35%, and you had the Democrats had primaries that were really good ones up in the 1st district. You would have thought we would have pulled some more people in.
Do you think that having better candidates on the Republican side this time around helped drive people out to vote in the primary?
I don't think it was the better candidate. I think it was different because you got to remember that we had the quote unquote A team didn't play, the B team didn't play, so. We had a pickup game, and I felt like come January that the 5 of us that were in the Republican primary could stood up with anybody because we had been through the mill. I mean, we had ground each other, and the one thing was it was not a negative campaign. There were a couple of people that took shots at each other, but generally speaking, it was a very, very positive, individualized campaign. And I think that was part of it. But I also think that what we're seeing across the country, this isn't just in Iowa, but across the country is this notion that people do not think they have a voice, and they don't think that either party represents them.
Well, yeah, and I was just looking at this recent Gallup poll that Democrats lead among independents by about 5%. Do you think that the independent card is going to be played out here in Iowa?
Yeah, I do, but I think it's going to break differently. I think that Iowa, this may be across the country that may be true, but you got to remember that includes California, New York, and a lot of very populated. In Iowa, our independents, we have about 30% people registered Republican, 30% Democrat, and 40% independent. And those 40% independent, depending on the state of play, typically break more conservative, because that is the reason most of those people are independents, is because they don't like getting mail and phone calls. That's the God's truth. And so a lot of them really are much more socially conservative or fiscally conservative, maybe not as socially conservative as others, but anybody that generates an economic message they're going to break right. If there's a break, they're going to break right. About 2 to 1.
Then let me ask you, there's a recurrent theme on our show that Lefty and I talk about it quite a bit. about Republicans lose quite a bit of the time on social issues. Can you have an opinion one way or another on that as you're running for treasurer?
Yeah, I think so. But I think that you can stand up and I've been very clear that I'm pro-life and I'm pro-traditional marriage and and that's the issue. But Russell, now let me finish the thought here, because Russell Kirk I'm a Russell Kirk guy, and Russell Kirk was one of the great conservative philosophers of the 20th century, and he was the one that Reagan went to all the time, and Kirk has written. I have internalized a lot of what Russell Kirk said, and one of the things he says is there are 4 pillars of conservatism, and social conservatism is one of those. But what Kirk said was that is, they're not line abreast all the time. Sometimes one is more important than another. So don't get wrapped around the axle that there's one thing that is like what right now, national security is really a big deal. So national security is one of those pillars. We ought to be worried about national security. A lot of times the economy is what drives the train. So sometimes you got to concentrate on the economy. That doesn't mean you don't pay attention to the others, but focus on the things that need to be focused on.
Well, then how do you respond? Because I know a lot of independents and unfortunately a lot of liberals, and what they consistently tell me, they like being conservatives. They like voting with fiscal conservatives.
Yep.
But when you get people up there, and Mitt Romney is one of the most milquetoast, middle of the road guys you're going to get, but I had independents and Democrats, both conservative Democrats, going, Mitt Romney scares me. He's going to take these rights. He's going to do this. How do you respond to that?
I mean, what rights was he going to take?
Well, yeah, and that's my point. But he was portrayed as he's going to take your right for abortion. He's going to take your right for all this stuff. And they're doing the same thing for Joni Ernst. So how are you going to?
Well, I think the thing we get labeled as is being extreme, and the notion is that our positions. My position isn't extreme. My position is based on my faith. And so when a person asks me to deny my faith, I have a trouble with that. So I always say, look, I'm a Catholic. That's the next question.
Right, right.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, and that's
now, let's save the question. We're here with Sam Clovis, and we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back right after this. Please visit our sponsors, Heb2014.org, BertroshanAssociates.com, LubinusLawFirm.com, Halo Capital at DesMoinesInterestRates.com, Des Moines Anesthesia at 515-474-6442. We have links to the websites, to their websites on our website, DocAndLefty.com. So make sure you go hit that. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We'll be back right after this break with candidate for state treasurer and former senatorial candidate, Sam Clovis.
I'm Lee Hebe. I'm candidate for Iowa governor. Some of you don't know what a libertarian is, and you think we're kind of crazy and that we wear these things on our head. You know what's crazy? It's crazy to continue to vote for the 2 big parties who for years have taken special interest funds, have taken that money, have legislated in favor of their special interest buddies at the expense of all of us. You've heard of the great right-wing conspiracy. Let me tell you the great libertarian conspiracy. We want to take over government, shrink government, and leave you alone. When it comes to economic growth, the answer is really not that complicated. If you look around the country, the states that are doing well have no income tax and are deregulated. We, on the other hand, have one of the highest personal income taxes. We have the very top corporate tax in the nation, and we're regulated to death. Did you know that raw milk is outlawed in the state of Iowa? Really, raw milk? I mean, first of all, we're the heartland of rural agriculture. But here's the important point. Will a state who doesn't trust you to choose your milk trust you with buying a weapon? Will a state that doesn't trust you with raw milk trust you to choose your own health care? Will a state that won't trust you with raw milk trust you to educate your children? Am I truly free if I can't decide what to eat, what to drink, as long as I'm not harming another person? As a Navy officer, I took an oath to defend the Constitution. Now, there's a part of the Constitution that says, shall not be infringed. It's the Second Amendment. I have a concealed carry permit, but really, why do I need one? I have the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, our right to carry firearms, is what supports all the other Bill of Rights. In November, have the courage to vote differently. Think about being more attached to your liberty and less attached to your political party.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. This is the Doc and Lefty program here on from the webcast1live.com studios. You can check out the show on our website, docandlefty.com. Also on webcast1live.com, and we have a caller calling in, a friend of the show, sponsor of the show, and I don't know, would you say long-time concerned citizen and candidate for governor on the Libertarian ticket, Dr. Lee Heeb. Dr. Heeb, we happen to have our good friend 7 and 9 here with us this evening, Sam Clovis. So how's it going?
Well, good. I was actually calling in because Dr. Petros asked me to call in and say something about Dr. Butts here, who sadly died today.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Well, I just, I've been asked around the state to say something, and, you couldn't ask for a more solid stand-up guy than Dr. Butts here, and we're going to very sorely miss him. Both, I think his death is a big loss to the state of Iowa and the cause of individual liberty.
It certainly was a shocking, tragic thing to read about today. Doc, any thoughts?
Yeah.
He was an excellent pilot, and we don't know what happened yet. I can tell you that, just one thing about Dr. Butts here. We always talk about, when we get together as libertarians, we always talk about kind of our conversion, how we became libertarians. And he was telling me that 6 to 7 years ago, he was studying economics as part of his MBA. He was a native Iowan, and he graduated from the University of Iowa. He epitomized what I think is the greatest thing about Iowans, in that he could get dressed up in a really nice suit and give a nice talk and lecture. And at the heart of things, though, he was really down to earth. And when he spoke to people and shook their hand and looked at you, it was really coming from the heart. There was nothing false about Doug Butts here. And we're very, very sorry about this whole thing.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Doc. I appreciate you taking time off. I understand you just got off Simon's show. So how'd that go for you?
Well, good. And we talked, obviously, about Dr. Butts here. And then they also wanted me to talk about Ebola. It's funny. I wish I could get this much traction on my campaign. I have Russian TV calling me about Ebola.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Well, same thing with me. I flew out to New York to film a show this weekend. I was in Atlanta, and I had a guy sitting next to me that was down there to film a show on Ebola. And he said, well, why don't you go ahead? He goes, you're a doctor. Why don't you come join me on this show? And I'm like, well, because I got to be up in New York. And I'm like, wow, if we had Ebola all the time, maybe our ratings would go up.
Oh, my.
I don't know.
Oh, my.
I don't know.
But he didn't know you were a psychiatrist.
Hey, I used to be a real doc. I used to be one. I know what a virus is.
I used to know how to use a stethoscope, too. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I used to know how to talk to patients.
Yes, well, and that's why you have psychiatrists. They go in and talk to their spinal surgeon. They come to me and go, what the hell did she do to me?
She didn't say anything to me. Yeah, I know.
All right.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks a lot,
Thanks
Lee.
for calling.
Take care. Bye-bye. So, anyway, Dr. Lee Heeb, I was excited. I thought she was just going to send us something to put on our website, but she actually called in. I was kind of hoping for, Picard versus, 7 of 9.
Yeah, the board.
I gotta tell you, no offense, but 7 and 9 was a lot better looking.
Oh yeah!
Oh heavens, yeah!
Oh yeah!
It doesn't take much. Look, you're not.
Man.
I have a lot more going for me than my looks.
It's a good thing.
I would generally agree, and you're in the right kind of show.
I'm in tremendous. That's why
we have two beautiful ladies in the studio.
We do
indeed,
and I have a face for radio, and by golly, I'm proud of that. So
well, you know what? While we're kind of sliding down the pole of nastiness. One of the things I don't want to ask you, and I don't want to. Hopefully, I won't hurt your feelings or offend you or anything. But Steve Dace had asked me to go do this. What the heck did he call it? Anyway, like a survey group, and
a focus group.
Focus group. There you go. And during this focus group, they were asking, "Who's your favorite candidate in the Senate race?" And that was absolutely true.
Yeah.
And then he asked, who you voting for? And it was split between Whitaker and Ernst.
Yeah.
And invariably they all said, we don't think Sam is electable.
Yeah, because I don't look like a Senate candidate.
So how are you going to respond to that? I mean, how would you respond to that? I mean, because that's an unfair assessment. It's like not voting for Hillary because of her hairstyle. You don't vote for Hillary because she's an idiot.
No, I think there's more to it, just an appearance issue. I think it has to do with the fact that I'm an unwavering conservative, and I think that there is that maybe there's a polish issue, or not necessarily polish. I don't think anybody's more articulate than me. I don't think anybody's.
That's what I was going to say.
Because I think what it really comes down to is that the vilification from the left would have been enormous. I mean, imagine me being the candidate right now.
Well, but they're paying Joni Ernst as the next Sarah Palin.
Well, but I mean, think about what they'd have done with me. I mean, it would have been, off the hook.
Well,
not like that isn't already. But.
I gotta say. Well, you know what? The mudslinging and destroying candidates' credit, like that's something that we can. That's a whole nother show.
Yeah, the politics of personal destruction, which honestly I believe started with Harkin back when it was Harkin versus Jepsen way back.
Well, it started further back.
Well, that's when it started for real. Anyway, we're going to take another quick break. Want to thank Sam Clovis for coming on discussing politics. I feel kind of bad because we should be talking about the treasurer spot in the state of Iowa, but when you get a genius intellect like this, you can't waste it, because honest to goodness, we have 4 people in the studio, and collectively me and you might hit 150 IQ. And then you add the girls in, and they're easily bumping us way over 400.
Easily.
And so then we get Sam Clovis in here, who's a 400 on his own.
Well, you know what they say.
What?
If you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Absolutely. So you're in the wrong room, Sam.
Yeah, you're in the wrong room. So you got to fix some more problems.
So anyway, thanks for everybody for tuning in. We're going to be back right after the segment. We're going to get back to talking about politics and trying to be serious. We want to thank all of our sponsors, Hebe2014.org, BetroshanAssociates.com, LubinusLawFirm.com, DesMoinesInterestrates.com, that's Halo Capital, Des Moines Anesthesia at 515-574-6442. Follow us at Doc and Lefty. There's content that you'll want to watch and look at, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter if you would, please. Also want to send another thanks out for DJ Matty G for doing a great job on this. We're going to be back right after this break. It'll take us about a minute. Thanks for tuning in.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for sticking around for these 40 minutes. We're chatting like a bunch of chatty chattersons.
We're a bunch of old hens.
Yeah.
Or like my mom used to say, a bunch of old witches stirring the cauldron.
I didn't want to gender it, or they'd take my liberal card away from me. You can't. I'm towing a really strict line on the way that I talk. Anyway, and you can see how well I toe that line most of the time.
Yes.
So we're here with our special guest, Sam Clovis. Sam, before we only got you for another 20 minutes because we only got 20 more minutes of show. So I did want to ask you about your campaign for state treasurer. I believe that we've had the same state treasurer for how long?
32 years.
32 years.
Right.
That's an awful long time.
There's no way that the pictures they have on his website are him
serving constitutional officer in America.
32 years.
32 years.
So let me toss you a softball. Let me toss you a low spinning curve right over the heart of the plate. What's wrong with any politician serving for 32 years?
I think what happens, particularly in a constitutional office like the treasurer, and I think the same could be said of the attorney general, and that circumstance that we have in the state, 28 years there. I think what happens is you become part of the bureaucracy. You become too set in the routine of the office. There's no freshness there. The other thing, your skills have not been enhanced. You don't bring anything new to the table. And I think that those are a lot of things. Is what happens then is we settle in, and if essentially what happens is we get less and less transparent over time and not more and more. And I think this is a real issue. I would say a larger issue of government in general, and specifically if you're asking about this, my particular race. I think this is really important because one of the things I've heard all over and I'll just tell you, I go out and talk to big audiences in the Republican gatherings, and I stand up and I say, how many of you know who the state treasurer is? And maybe I get 10% of the hands go up. I was in a gathering of 400 people the other night, and I said, how many of you know what the treasurer does? And 3 hands went up. And those were elected county treasurers. And so that is a problem because if you don't know what your government is doing, the person who is responsible for receiving all of the revenue that comes to the state, and a person who writes all of the check, a person who is responsible for the Iowa Public Employees Retirement System, the judicial retirement system, the police officers retirement system, a person responsible for the Iowa College Savings Iowa program, that's a problem. And so I think one of the things that I bring is this notion of, one is freshness. I'm eminently qualified for the job because I have I'm a military veteran. I have an MBA. I have a doctorate in public administration. I'm an economist. I started in the private sector. I started a business from scratch and created 150 jobs and know how to do that. So I know how to do accounting and all that. And I think one of the big things, I was reading an article today before I came in here, was talking about what's happening in Europe right now. In Europe right now, the European Central Bank is having a crisis because they are faced with a point where inflation is gone below 2%. It raises a big red flag. So they're going to have to start quantitative easing. We are in the stretches of that. Most of that money then goes into equities. You have your pension profiles and you have a lot of your state money involved in equities. If the stock market decides to start to erode, which it has over the last week, we're at a 6-month low in the stock market.
Yeah, but we're at an all-time high.
Well, but what happens is that if this continues, and it's quite possible that it'll be a gradual erosion, then things like the unfunded equity in IPERS, which is $6 billion, by the way, which has doubled since 2008, that needs more personal attention from the person in charge. And that's why I think you need to bring fresh ideas and fresh looks into these things and more transparency.
So what would you then, what are your specific policy proposals? I mean, does the office of the state treasurer need to be overhauled wholesale, or are there more would you take more of a scalpel approach?
I would take more of a scalpel approach because one of the things that I've said, and I promised this out here, is I've already talked to the state auditor.
Friend of the show.
Yeah. She's running for
Mary
election.
Mossman.
Yep.
Yeah. And I've talked to the state auditor and it said when I'm elected, the day after we get sworn in, I will bring 2 letters to your office. One will be a request for an audit of the office of treasurer, and the other will be for an audit of the operations of the office of the treasurer. Those are 2 big deals because I need to know, the people of Iowa need to know what's going on inside those offices. I think the state government could probably use that audit look. I mean, I'm not going to tell the other officers how to operate, but I think I need to know where I'm starting. And if I don't know I don't know what, then we need to go in and take a look. And maybe we need to move people around. Maybe we can find other things. Maybe we need to put more emphasis on pension management, or we need to put more emphasis on the College Savings Iowa program. But that we don't know that because nobody knows anything about what's going on inside the treasurer's office. That's a problem. And so I think, and one of the things I want to do is to go out and have public hearings so that people know what's going on with the money that they're putting in our tax system here. I think it's important for us to go out and work with legislators. I already have. I've already started working with legislators. They're ready to go forward with expanding tax credits for College Savings Iowa. And one of the big issues, and this is a sensitive issue, is that for many years, our elected officers have used public service announcements during election year to essentially electioneer.
Right.
We already have, and I've already discussed this with legislators in the General Assembly, to bring forward a bill that will prohibit that, because I think that is not appropriate use of people's money. What I think we ought to do with that money is to go out and go to middle and low income families and help them start savings programs for their children. Because a child who has a college savings program is 7 times more likely to go to college and 4 times more likely to graduate. That is the way you break the poverty cycle in the state of Iowa. Those are things. That's not Republican. That's not Democrat. That's not liberal. That's not conservative. That's Iowan.
All right, that's terrific. We're going to be back with candidate for state treasurer and former senatorial candidate Sam Clovis. We're grateful to have you on the show today. It's really been an interesting show. Especially Lefty has been kind of. I don't know if he's intimidated or whatever, like waiting in the weeds, because he's good at that. He's good at waiting in the weeds and then jumping out like a rat or something.
No.
And anyway, I got myself in trouble for comparing people to animals before.
Like a rat?
Like a rat.
What did I never do to you?
Look at you. I take it back, but it's been a great show. We're going to be back after this when we're finishing the show up. We're going to be asking Sam some more questions, and hopefully they'll be pertinent. We want to thank everybody for tuning in.
That's a good.
Yes,
that'd be a good thing to do.
Yes, it is.
Just
want to thank
most
all
of
of
the
our
time.
sponsors: Des Moines Anesthesia, Hebe2014.org, PetrosianAssociates.com, Lubinas Law Firm, Halo Capital at DesMoinesInterestrates.com. Follow us on Doc and Lefty. There's a new blog up called Ebola that you really should probably take a look at. And of course, we've been inundated with Ebola stuff. This really kind of compares the Obama response with H1N1 and Ebola. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We'll be back right after this break.
Petrosh and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Petrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at petroshandassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Petrosh and Associates.
And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. We got a few minutes left with our special guest, Sam Clovis, running for treasurer. And so, when I got a couple of questions that occurred to me during the break, Sam, one of the things that we've talked about on the show before are these, you call them constitutional offices. They're offices that are laid out in the Constitution that have to be filled by general elections. You have governor, treasurer, I believe Secretary of State, Attorney General,
State Treasurer, and Secretary of Agriculture.
That's right, Secretary of Agriculture,
and the State Auditor.
Those the Ag Secretary is the one that I shouldn't have forgotten, but it slipped my mind after the other.
Bill Northview, who's been in there forever.
Right.
2006.
Yeah.
Forever. So, other than sort of like the typical your governor, your lieutenant governor. Mm-hmm. Do you think it is appropriate? And if not, what would would you change the system to have things that are offices that are essentially nonpartisan or should be nonpartisan, like your treasurers, your auditors, your secretaries of state? Should those be held in partisan general elections, or should there be a more independent appointment process? For example, how Iowa appoints justices to the Supreme Court, which isn't a wholesale appointment, but has a nonpartisan board that reviews candidates.
I think it would be interesting discussion. I'm not one of the things that I look at. There are many states that have constitutional offices that are appointed. Like the state auditor would be a political appointment. Now, one of the issues with the state auditor is that you generally have to appoint a CPA to keep CPA firm status there, and you all know that from talking to Mary.
Yep.
I think Secretary of State is a very important office to be elected. I think that's one. If you were to ask me for a definitive answer, I would say it ought to be a slate. It ought to be a slate. If you ought to have, through the party nominating convention or whatever the primary process is in the party, then the governor, lieutenant governor, and all the 5 constitutional offices would be run as a slate. So if you vote for the governor and he or she wins, then that slate is in.
Is that more?
Because what that does is it creates a better working team for the governor, and I think the governor needs to have executive support if you were asking me.
Right.
I'm not proposing a change. I'm just saying if you're asking me a hypothetical, that's what I would say.
Well, and it's interesting you brought up Secretary of State specifically, because while we don't want to kind of go too far off the rails, because I want to have ask you another question about your specific campaign proposals, because you have a lot out there about college and and ideas about how to make college affordable, and
yes, I do,
and the rest of that. But I feel like Secretary of State, you pointed out as being important to be an elected office, and I would think actually that would be the lowest for me. That would be the lowest level, where the person in charge of elections shouldn't necessarily be a partisan official, because you see around the country in where liberals are really concerned about some of the proposals that secretaries of state in red states have been, especially in I believe. Virginia, they had an issue.
Well, they did Florida in 2000.
Florida, yeah. Matt Schultz has gotten a little bit of flack here in Iowa.
Ken Blackwell in the Ohio. Yeah.
And so you have liberals concerned about that kind of stuff. You have conservatives concerned about things that liberal secretaries of states have done. And it seems counterintuitive to me to have a partisan official in charge of what is effectively a nonpartisan exercise, in that everyone's voting and voting their conscience and whatever. The vote itself is a nonpartisan thing, even though it's a partisan. Well, that's an incoherent thing I just said, but you know what I'm driving at.
I would say that that there are there may be legislative processes that you would go through. I mean, there are all kinds of options I think that are available to us. I mean, the system we have right now is we have to elect all these people.
Yep.
But what it does, I do think it creates a situation where you will have tension inside the executive branch of the government unnecessarily. And I'm all for relieving tension, and because I think tension leads to inefficiencies, and frankly, it also leads to things that aren't really necessarily what's best for the people. Because partisanship in those areas, if that shows itself, then it hurts the people, and that's not the point. I mean, the point is we always the first thing out of our mouths, the first things we do every day ought to be thinking about what's best for the people of Iowa.
Sure. So you've had some interesting discussions about college education around the state. I believe the proposal that I heard from you was that you wanted to be able to freeze an interest rate from the start of college education. Freeze tuition. Oh, yeah. Tuition. That's right. That's what it was. Yeah. Freeze tuition at the level of your entrance into college for the entire time that you are.
Actually, from the time you start saving for college.
You start saving for college. See, I was fiddling with my guitar at a tailgate.
But how does that reflect free market economy?
Well, I think what it does is college affordability is really the big issue now, and this goes to the social cost argument, because if you are able then to freeze a particular price for that, then you have certitude, and then the fact is you're more likely to complete college, and then the social cost goes down exponentially as opposed to.
Well, but we already have countries that provide essentially free education for their entire country. Now, people have been pointing out Germany here lately. That's not the system we're talking about. But in Ukraine and Russia, degrees are free. The problem is once you get your degree in whatever it is,
but
you're still laying concrete. Well, all right. I mean, that's what we're doing. Is from my perspective,
okay,
we're degrading the value of a degree.
I don't
because if
I don't agree with
everybody
that at all.
has
I don't agree
has
with
a
that at all.
degree.
No,
right?
That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that we're trying to provide some certitude for the cost of college education. Because if a student has a savings account, we know the likelihood of them going is much better. Across the country today, there are 11.4 million people involved in the IRS 529 program. That's not a very big number when you think about the number of people that do that. And the average savings account that we have is about $18,000. That's all. That's all that gets saved. That's 1 year of college. College tuitions have gone up 4% a year for the last 30 years. 4% a year.
Well, don't you think that's
and
because
incomes have not gone up, and you know why? Because the government subsidizes that, and there's no risk assigned at the university.
Well, absolutely. So all they're doing is you're creating schools, creating more schools, cheapening the effect, and taking away the bonus of having a degree. I mean, how many people? I mean, honest to goodness, you're a liberal arts degree, right? I have a liberal arts degree, and we happen to make it, but I can't tell you how many people. They get a social work degree and they're making $28,000 a year.
Well,
and you get a liberal arts degree. If you don't take it the next step to graduate school, that degree doesn't get you anything. It gets you a $10 an hour job at my office.
That's the real market. That's the real market in play there, though. That's the market.
That has nothing to do with college education.
It has nothing to do with cost of college.
Well, I get that, but if you're artificially inflating the cost of college and then you make it even more accessible by these plans, all you're doing is further encouraging people to get degrees that aren't going to help them in the long run.
Well, the cost of college has already been artificially inflated.
Yeah,
by a lot.
Yeah, I get it. And,
by decoupling some of the public assistance that went into college for a long, long time.
But there's no risk assigned at the college level because the loans are taken out between the people and
the government. Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
The government is on the hook, and every time you raise the amount of money that's available, tuitions go up.
All right.
Because there's no risk assigned at the
We're going to have Sam back to talk about college education because we're out of time.
I've talked to one of his coordinators, and apparently he's back next week with us.
Yes, I am.
I don't know.
Is that right?
I just got it on Facebook.
I saw it on the schedule, and I thought, well, that can't possibly be right. But I want to tell you this. I have enjoyed this probably more than I have any other program that I've been on in a long time because I enjoy this type of dialogue, and it's candid, and it's frank, and you people are marvelous young men.
What that means? Yeah. Sam likes us better than Dace or Simon.
Well, I think
no. He said no. All right,
I didn't say that.
That's high praise. We certainly do appreciate it. We certainly have appreciated having you on.
Yeah,
Doc,
we loved it.
Why don't you take us out?
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We have Sam Clovis here with us. Why should people vote for you, Sam?
Because I'm eminently qualified and I'm a really good guy.
All right, eminently means really, really qualified.
And his mom
the liberals out there
loves him.
And his mom loves him. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next week with Sam Clovis.
So long, everybody.
Take care.
Hi, I'm Representative Tom Shaw, and I love these guys, both of them.
Love these guys. Get over here. Love both of them.